Good evening and welcome to a fresh new semester of small groups. Great things are happening here at Word of Flame Church, and we're so glad that you've chosen to be a part of it. A few things to help small groups go smoothly. Number one, we want to start and end on time, and this is to respect your time as well as the time of those who are hosting in their homes. The second thing we ask you to do is please participate in the discussion. But we also ask that you would be respectful of other group members. What happens in small groups stays in small groups and not on social media. And this helps to foster open and honest discussion. This semester we're going to cover a topic, Today Matters. How decisions made today matter as we move forward in life. Your life. Now we know that not every decision that we make is critical or crucial, but there are some decisions that are vitally important to our lives. In the book, Make Today Count, which I've kind of based our lessons on for this semester, the author, John Maxwell, says some things, and I want to read some with you. By the way, this will be the longest lesson probably this semester. Bear with me. But John Maxwell says in Make Today Count, he says, how would you describe your life? Are you achieving what you desire? Are you accomplishing the things that are important to you? He says the secret of success is determined by your daily agenda. Or in other words, today matters. If you make a few key decisions and then manage them well in your daily agenda, most likely you will succeed. You will never change your life until you change something you do daily. He says, you see, success doesn't just suddenly occur one day in someone's life. For that matter, neither does failure. Each is a process. Each day of your life is merely preparation for the next. What you become is the result of what you do today. In other words, you are preparing for something. The way you live your life today is preparing you for tomorrow. And then he goes on to say, you can make every day of your life a masterpiece. Every day of your life, a masterpiece. The question comes, and it was for me, is how do you do that? He says, good decisions help to create a better tomorrow. Good decisions help to make for a better tomorrow. And he says you begin to build a better life by determining to make good decisions. But that alone is not enough. You need to know what decisions to make. And so he gives 12 points in the book, but we're not going to discuss all 12. We're going to pull 4 out this semester, and we're going to talk about them. The first topic that we're going to talk about is the topic of priorities. Now, you should have already done your icebreaker that gave you the opportunity to set priority to deal with that fire you suddenly found yourself in. I want to know, how many of you got down and prayed in the middle of that fire? How many of you ran around the house looking for important papers? And how many of you grabbed some clean underwear? Nick Mahaney? Just wondering. Okay. So a priority is defined as a thing that is regarded as more important than another. And in our all-consuming world of conflicting demands, and how do we decide what do we tackle first, second, or third? Every day there are demands placed on our time. People, projects, distractions compete for our valuable time. And if you don't pay attention to how you use your time, it's easy to wake up one day and ask the question, how did I waste my life? Time is the most valuable resource that we are given. We all get 24 hours in a day, but once it's used, we can never ever get it back. So the question becomes, how can we make the most of these 24 hours that God gives us as a gift each and every day? The Bible tells us in Ephesians 5:15, he says, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but live like those that are wise. And make the most of every opportunity. That's from the New Living Translation. The King James Version says, redeeming the time in these evil days, or because the days are evil. So how do we do that? How do we make today matter? I would contend by setting good and right priorities. Now, there are three questions that I want us to consider as we move through this lesson. Question number one, are priorities even important? Is it important to have priorities? Number two, is God concerned about us having right priorities? And then the third question, what are your priorities? Now, the Bible gives us some clear statements on the importance of priorities, or how to have right priorities in our lives. Colossians 3:2 says to us, set your affection on things above and not on things here on the earth. The writer there is saying, make eternal things your priority. See, the television shows you may watch, the movies you watch, the hobbies that you participate in, nothing wrong with those hobbies, nothing wrong with sports, nothing wrong with hunting and cars and all of those things, but they don't last. The wealth that not all of us accumulate wealth, but the little savings that we may have, it's not going to last. The only thing that is going to last are those things that have eternal significance attached to them. Getting your name written in a history book is not as important as getting your name written in the book that is in heaven. Accumulating wealth down here it doesn't compare to the wealth that we should lay up in heaven. What is it Jesus said? What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but he loses his soul? So right priorities come out of making God number one in our lives. It's not my will, God, but it's your will that must be done. Jesus understood the importance of priorities. He tells us in Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added unto you. The New Living Translation says it like this: seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. So Jesus is telling us the priority: seek God first. People, objects, goals, other desires compete with God for first place in our life. And in our fast-paced world, all these things have a way of bumping God down the priority list in our lives if we are not careful. So we've got to actively choose to make God first and foremost in our lives. It is a choice. And with that choice comes a blessing. Jesus says if we will make him our number one priority, there's a blessing. He will give to us everything we need. Not everything we want, but everything we need. Now, in order to set right priorities, what we have to do is we have to define what is important to us. What is important to us? It's easy to struggle with setting priorities because there are a lot of things that are pulling at us, a lot of goals that we want to achieve, and there's a lot of people that want to set priorities for our lives. But we have to define what's important to us. And so one of the ways, or two of the ways, that we can identify what's important to us is by what we spend money-wise and how we spend our time. What we spend our money on and how we spend our time will define to us what's important to us. Another thing that will define what's important to us will be our values and our belief systems. What we value and what we believe in. If our belief system is that, hey, Sunday morning is my time with God, I have to come together with a body of believers and worship God. If that's part of your belief system, if that's what's important to you, then that's going to be a priority. If you value hard work, then that's going to be the most important thing to you. But whatever you value, whatever you deem as valuable and believe wholeheartedly in, that's going to be a top priority in your life. Stephen Covey said it like this, and I quote, he said, whatever is at the center of our life will be the source of the security, guidance, and wisdom and power in our lives. Another man by the name of Dalen Oaks said it like this: desires dictate our priorities, priorities shape our choices, and choices determine our actions. But he begins with defining what's important to us. Another way to define what's important to us is by asking the question, why are you here? What is your mission? Or in other words, what is your most cherished role that you play in life? Is it being a spouse? Is it being a parent? Is it being a child of God? Is it being a friend, a co-worker? What is your most cherished role in life? Is it being a part of ministry? That's going to define what's important to you. If being a good spouse, being a wonderful parent is important to you, then you're going to set your priorities around those things. Another way to define what's important to us is to ask the question, how do I want to be remembered? How do I, once I'm gone, how do I want people to remember me? And that's very sobering when you think about it. But it helps us to set the right priorities in life. Another thing about setting priorities that helps us to do, it helps us to say no to some things. There's so many things coming at us, so many things that we can get involved in. When we have a priority or priorities for our lives, it helps us to say no to some things. It's not that that thing is not important or that it's not good. It's just that it's not important at this moment. When the boss says, hey, we've got some voluntary overtime, would you like to be a part of it? Well, you know what? Because your priority on Sunday morning when that voluntary overtime is offered is to come to the house of God, you will say, you know what? I appreciate it very much. It's not a bad thing, but it doesn't fit into my priorities of life, belief system, and what's important to me. God. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be added unto you. And so before we can say yes to some things, we've got to learn how to say no to some things. Jesus modeled that concept for us when he says in John 2:23, now when he was at Jerusalem at the Passover and the feast day, many believed in his name when they saw the miracles that he did. But Jesus did not commit himself unto them because he knew what was in them. Jesus said, hold up, wait a minute. There are just some things I can't commit to. I've got to say no to some things. And there are some things that we've got to learn to say no to. And it may hurt some feelings, but there are priorities in our lives. We want to please God. We want to take care of family. Maybe your role list is God, family, church, and work. And those are my priorities, and everything else falls below that. Jesus said it like this in Luke 2:49. He said unto them, how is it that you sought me? Didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? One translation says, or about my Father's house. In other words, he says, hey, that's top priority. If you want to know where I am at on a certain day, you know where to find me, because that's my priority. And so we can see that setting priorities in our lives is an important biblical theme that we all need to do. As the author of Making Today Count, John Maxwell, said, good decisions today will give you a better tomorrow. Thank you for being at small groups. Have a great time of discussion. God bless.